Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in the Prophecy of Malachi, the last book of the Old Testament, and our last book through our journey through the entire Bible. We actually started the journey in the book of Matthew and went all the way through, but okay. We're in chapter 2, and I want to pick up where I left off, dealing with Israel's unfaithfulness. So, Israel's unfaithfulness, and let me go back and read it, and then, uh, so this is where we left off, and I'm gonna answer a couple of questions, but because I'm comparing the two, when Israel married foreign women, and how the white Christian church used some of this to justify segregation, racial segregation. Okay, and I want to say, well, what did God mean when He condemned mixed marriages? So we're going to get back to that, because, or here is our verse again. It says, Judas hath acted treacherously, and that a detestable thing hath been done in Israel and in Jerusalem. For Judah has profaned the Lord's sanctuary, which he loves, and he has married the daughter of a foreign god. The man who does this, may the Lord cut off any descendants from the tents of Jacob, if they present an offering, even if they present an offering to the Lord. Now, we said that where this started at, well, not started, but we went back to Ezra. And by the way, this is the same time frame. So Ezra here, as you read Ezra and Nehemiah, is the same post-exile time frame as Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. And Malachi is rebuking Israel for a lot of falling into the way. So this is the rebuke, but notice when he says, let me go back because I want you to read this. Let's see, where is it? Verse chapter 9, he says, after these things had been done, the leaders approached me and said, the people of Israel, the priests, the Levites, have not separated themselves from the surrounding peoples whose detestable practice act are like those of the Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites, Amorites, Moabites, Egyptians, and Amorites. Indeed, the Israelite men have taken some of their daughters as wives for themselves and their sons, so that the holy seed has become mixed with the surrounding people. The leaders and officials have taken the lead in this unfaithfulness. Now, so God condemns mixed marriages, but why? And I said this as a sidebar. What was one of the most shameful events in the Christian church, the Western Christian church, the American Christian church, is that they use scriptures like this to say, well, see, God doesn't want the races to mix. And as I said before, racism was, the church was knee deep in racism. Racism in America could not exist without the Christian church. Slavery, Jim Crow, could not exist without the Christian church. To the church's shame. So you start off with slavery. How does a Christian nation, how does a Christian nation that say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equally by their creator, and then have slaves? And when you hear some of the defense today of white Christian nationalists, white evangelicals, white conservatives, white Christian conservatives, they they desperately and pathetically try to use things like, well, CRT and all that kind of stuff to try. They don't want to talk about that horrible history. The church led in this, right? They took the lead. So how did the church do it? Well, one, they did it by law. They instituted laws. It was legal to be racist. It was legal at one point to have slavery. It was legal to have segregation. They justified it by law. They invented laws. Secondly, they did it by science. There was pseudoscience where people said, well, the science said, well, the blacks were inferior physically and emotionally and spiritually to the white man. This is why you have, for example, what's called the Great White Hope, because they desperately saw for a man who could beat a boxer by the name of Jack Johnson. He lived decades before Muhammad Ali. And basically, he would just effortlessly beat these white boxers. And then, so they would say that the black people were inferior, and at every turn that was debunked. Even to this day, even to this day with medical, you have white nurses and white doctors that treat blacks differently. Well, blacks don't need as much. They don't need pain medicine, all kinds of stuff that they come up with. That is stepped in racism. But the last, and to me, from a Christian perspective, I'm a Christian, right? So the Christian, as I said before, racism couldn't exist without the Christian church. So they use God. It's against God's will for the races to be segregated, and this has plagued the church. That is why, for example, one of the two leading Word of Faith men, the two men who they were the architects. They were the architects of the Word of Faith movement, or better known as the Faith and Prosperity movement, fell out over racism because one of the white ministers said, hey, he didn't believe that it was God's will to mix any of the races. He was teaching this mixed congregation at that time. And this is around the 1990s. So why did that mindset exist when these were Bible teaching men? See, because they taught it wasn't God's will. And they would use verses like this. But let's go back to the biblical then reading. Why does the Bible say? Why did God condemn the mixing here of the holy seed? Because as we said, the Israelites, we can apply this today to the Christian church. But you have to be careful about that. Which 1 Corinthians chapter 7, Paul deals with the idea of a Christian in a non-Christian marriage. Okay. But the Israelites were strictly forbidden that the Jews could only marry a Jew. And then primarily within the tribes. But if a person from Issachar married somebody from Benjamin, that wasn't the worst thing that was going to happen. But each tribe primarily was to marry within these tribes. A Levite really could not marry another person outside of a Levite. And the reason why is because of the priesthood. But for sure, you could not marry outside of the Israelites because that was the holy seed. And that's why he says this here, that they have mixed the holy seed. Okay, they have mixed the holy seed. All right. So from this perspective, that's why God said not to mix. Now he also gave the reasons why he did not want them to mix. And that was because these were extremely wicked people, pagan, immoral, he did not want the contamination of that seed. That's why. So it had nothing to do with race, and that's the whole point of why I kind of went on that excursion. It had nothing to do with race, as some people today believe. You know, there are a lot of people that are so irritated, they're upset when you see the commercials, and you see a lot of commercials today featuring interracial marriage, and people are upset over that. On the conservative side, on the Christian conservative side. And the point is, why are you upset over that? Now, I'll tell you this, as with all things liberal, as with all things Hollywood, they will always over push it. If they could, they would push even more the transgender gender agenda. They would push that. I'm gonna tell you why they won't. Money. They would lose the audience. It's bad enough for some people that the interracial marriage, the biracial marriage, and children are seen a lot more on TV today. But if you push the LGBT agenda, you're going to lose your audience, which means advertisers are not going to advertise. That's why, and this time they're not going to push it as much. But that is more so again a Hollywood / liberal push for that. That you see more and more and more and more interracial marriage. I don't know why they do it. Because in the reality, most people today still do not marry outside of their races. They will marry, usually you can say that they will marry within proximity. In other words, television is not going to really push that. But they will do it as far as proximity. So if you have an integrated school, integrated community, then you're going to increase the notion. You're going to increase the mixing of races. Either way, that is, God never condemned that. He never condemned that. He never condemned that. So geographically, you will always have the different races. That's not the sin. The sin is when you think your race is superior than another race. So even in this verse here, superiority wasn't why God was doing that, but the fact that God had created the nation of Israel separate and unto himself. That's why. Now, the same applies to Christians in that our lives are holy, separate from the world, and that's how we should live. And as much as God said this, by the way, there was not ever even said that you cannot ever, under any circumstances, marry outside of the Israelite nation. I'm going to say, for the exception of the Levites, because God wanted the priesthood to be, strictly the Levitical tribe. And I'm, at this point, I just can't think of it. I cannot even recall if it was ever recorded that someone from the Levites married outside the Levites. I just don't know if that's in the Bible. And now, somebody from Judah did, which was the bloodline of Jesus. In fact, you did have the idea that there were people who married, and even under the law, there was a provision that a foreigner, if they embrace the God of Israel, were to be accepted. So within the bloodline of Jesus himself, you had at least three pagan women. Tamar, who Judah, doing whatever trip he was going on, remember he separated back in the book of Genesis for about 20 years. And that's what the episode you have when he hooked up with Tamar. Now, Tamar was his daughter-in-law, and he went down, as he went, I forgot where he went, but he ended up spending 20 years. And when he spent 20 years, and there he married a person, had 2 sons. But the sons were wicked. Why? They were pagans. One the Lord killed, and one of them was the husband of Tamar. And so Judah said they had this kind of, to me anyway, a weird custom where they said, look, in order to preserve a genealogy, so if one of the men died, then his brother would then take up, would take his brother's wife and then raise up seed to her. Very weird to me, but it was a practice. Even before the law of the practice, it was then incorporated into the law. Well, Judah said to Tamar, okay, son is dead. Wait till, I think he had in total 3 sons, because 2 of them were killed because of their wickedness. And then the other one, Judah said, wait till he grows up, and then, he will carry on the seed. Well, he grew up, and then Judah was like, okay, kind of forgot about it. So she one day kind of knew the habits of Judah, knew that he went down to the red light district. So she disguised herself in the way prostitutes would cover. They would put a veil over their face. So she put a veil on her face and then went down and acted like a prostitute. Judah slept with her. And when he said he didn't have any money, he gave her like a pledge. He slept with her and then she got pregnant. Well, later on, somebody go, hey, guess what? Your daughter-in-law, man, she knocked up. And so Judah, in his righteous indignation, hypocrite, said, bring her out so we can burn her. And so she go, that the payment that she go, the promise of the payment. This is the man who impregnated me, and he go, oops, okay. Upon she was a pagan. The next pagan was Rahab. She was the prostitute. Rahab was the prostitute, but she hid the spies. And then Rahab became like the great-great-grandmother of David. Well, further down, let's see. Well, you got Rahab and probably some 400 years later, right? Then you had Ruth. Ruth was a Moabitess, right? Look at that right there. You see Moabites. She was a Moabitess. And these men were in the bloodline. These women were in the bloodline of Jesus. But in each case, they wasn't separate. Tamar necessarily said she embraced the God of Israel, but Rahab and Ruth embraced God. In their case, their marriage was accepted by God. What is interesting about this marriage here was that, now let me slide down to verse 10. Where did that? Here's what's all right, so well, let me skip down. I think it's well, I can't find it now. I just read it yesterday. This became a sin, but to them, and then the way that they said they were going to deal with this was to, here we go. Look at verse 9. So all the men of Judah and Benjamin gathered in Jerusalem within 3 days. And on the 20th day of the 9th month, all of the people sat in the square of the house, trembling because of this matter and because of the heavy rain. Then the priest stood up and said to the people, you have been unfaithful by marrying foreign women, adding to Israel's guilt. Therefore make confession to Yahweh, the God of your fathers, and do his will. Separate yourselves from the surrounding peoples and your foreign gods. And just so you know, kind of, it said verse 44, and then all of these had married foreign women, and some of the wives had given birth to children. So that was sort of the consequences, the bad consequences of that. So my whole point of this kind of little excursion here was to show you that the reason why foreign women were, that you could not enter, you could not have mixed marriages, because it was a spiritual thing, not mixing the holy seed. However, if a foreign person embraced God, then that was accepted, in the case, such as in the case of Rahab and Ruth. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome, and I will see you in the next study.